Yeah, first off, just want to say thank you. It's really an honor when you think about how many just good baseball programs there are in the Central Texas area. When you're talking 1A through 6A, there's so many powerhouses in this area. And so uh, for me to be acknowledged as the person to represent Axtell is just really a privilege because Axel, for a lot of times, I think was kind of slept on, and there's been a lot of good people come through here. But especially now, it's good for these kids to start to get recognition, and luckily, I get to be the one to kind of reap some of those benefits. I think that the biggest thing is that winning breeds winning, and so I think these kids got a taste of winning when it came to football the past couple of years. Whenever us new coaches kind of came in and kind of took over that realm. And so I think they got to see themselves blossom and understand, okay, hey, we are just as talented as a lot of people that we play against. And baseball has always been something that Axtell really prides himself on. And so now to take the abilities that they have and combine that with the confidence in themselves, we kind of put it all together this year and ultimately didn't get the end goal that we wanted, being a state championship, but we made it farther than anybody in school history. And we bring back every starter next year, all 9 starters. And so I think this year, honestly, is more so a huge stepping stone going into next year. So they see, okay, we can play with all these people. I mean, we're in a one-run game with the number 1 team in the state who goes on to win the state championship. And so I think just like I said, the confidence that they got from football, and then also we cannot understate enough the relevance of their work ethic. I mean, they show up every single day going back August 1st to now, and they have 6 a.m. workouts 3 to 4 days a week. And so when you're playing baseball deep into May, you've been playing 5 months out of the year already, and you're still showing up at 6 a.m., whether that be for early morning baseball practice or whether that be for early morning weights. I mean, it shows that you are putting in the effort to go as far as you want to play. And so really it was more so a blessing for me to be able to see that those guys were rewarded for their hard work. Yeah, I think that there's two really. When you look at the course, or I say three really, over the course of our season, like I said, because we pitch really well and because we play such good defense, we don't give up a lot of runs. And the way that we play offense is kind of old school. It's small ball, get a bunt down, move a guy over, hit and run to move the guy behind him. And so it's not the most flash thing. We're not just going to go rake doubles off the wall. But we know that we have a really strong pitching staff. We know we have a really strong defense. And so if we can get 2, 3 runs, we're confident in a game. And that showed up in our tiebreaker when we had to play Riesel for a third time for a district championship. We were in a 2-run game, or we were in a 2-1 game against Bosqueville. We walk off a 1-run game. And so those are two of the positives. And then probably the fuel in that same situation, understanding that in a 1-run game like that, it's a matter of you can play as well as you possibly can. Like when we lost to Collinsville, Ethan pitched as good as he could possibly pitch and good enough to beat the number 1 team in the state. And a couple bad bounces go our way, and we blow a 1-0 lead in the 7th inning, lose 2-1. And so when you go through both of those situations, it's good for those guys to see that any of those games, whether it be Riesel, whether it be Bosqueville, whether it be Collinsville, you're a bounce or two away from winning or losing. And so, and like we said, against Collinsville, it happened to be in the very last inning. And so trying to get them to understand and practice that when I'm harping on you about the small things matter and finishing practice the way that we're supposed to finish, that's where those things show up. And so we got to see both the positive and the negative sides of that over the course of the year. Oh, it's a huge deal. And this goes back to something from my days playing at Robinson under some really good coaches on some really good teams, that it was preached to us early. If there's two things that we're always going to do, we're always going to pitch well and we're always going to play good defense. And if you ask any of our guys kind of what our mantra is for our team, that's what they're going to tell you. Because if you can score 1 run, that's enough to go win a game. And so that's really what we pride ourselves on. And Ethan's just a perfect example of that. He's a guy that's going to go up there, he's going to compete his butt off, and he's going to throw strikes. And when you throw strikes, it wins you a lot of games. And when he's on the mound, and this goes for any of our pitchers, Zach Ditto, Brandon Klanica, AJ Fetch was a freshman that came on at the end of the year for us. Levi Leathers when we have to pull him off shortstop. When any of these guys are on the mound, we know that they're going to give us all they have, and that's better than a lot of people on other teams can give you. And so it makes your defense confident too, because you know that they're going to give you a chance to make plays. And so they rally behind those guys and they do a really good job. Yeah, that's the battle that you run into, especially at a 2A level, where you've got kids participating in football, basketball, baseball, golf, ag, everything that they can possibly do, they are involved in. And so they understand the time that there's going to be the least amount of conflict is, like Coach Horn says, before the sun comes up. And so it's a system that we implemented last year, which was all of our first year here at Axtell. And you never really know what kind of feedback you're going to get with that, but these kids completely bought into it. And you can tell they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. And it gives you a mental edge over your opponents as well, knowing I'm up doing something that most people in their day probably aren't doing. And so we just kind of keep that ball rolling into baseball season. And whether it be morning weights or if we know that there's going to be rain in the afternoon, I mean, we're out there practicing baseball on a baseball field at 6 a.m. And there's not a whole lot of teams in the state of Texas that are doing that. And so trying to just get those kids to understand we have the ability, but the ability means absolute nothing if you're not willing to put in the work. And they've really bought into it. Oh, 100%. I think that the biggest thing that we can take out of this year is just seeing that we can beat these guys. We beat Bosqueville, who's a perennial top 10 team. We played the number one team in the state to the last inning. We actually led 9 of the 14 innings of that series, which is kind of crazy to think about that we lost both those games. But we played Valley Mills at the beginning of the year. So I made our schedule more difficult this year by playing all of those guys. We played bigger schools. We played the top teams in 2A. We played Crawford this year. I mean, we put ourselves in a position to where if we want to play with these guys, then we have to actually play these guys. And we gained a lot of confidence, understanding that we can beat most of them over the course of this season. And then, like I said, to play the number one team in the state to that point, closer than anyone had all year. And then to understand that we have every single starter coming back next year. We plan to be right here, if not farther, next year. And so it's something that we can kind of roll this momentum over to and hopefully carry it into a state championship next year.